Hi guys, this is Jen from Echo Voice. I have Mr. Patrick Bergy here with the American Awakening. Um, he has 20 plus years in the DoD, enlisted in the Army as a contractor. You want to tell us a bit about your background?
Um, well, I enlisted in the Army in 2004. Actually, sorry, 2005. Ran for election supervisor in Pasco County in 2004. No political affiliation. Interesting story in its own right. Um, uh, 2005, I enlisted in the Army at the age of 39, turned 40 at basic training at Fort Benning. They said at the time that I was the first person at Fort Benning, at least, to successfully complete basic training at 40. Others went in at 39, but they were still 39 when they went in. So did a couple of years with my reserve unit, JCSE out of MacDill over in Tampa. Um, Primarily, my MOS was 25 Bravo, 25 Charlie, which is like system, information management officer, IMO, and signal support, and 25 Bravo would be like your networks and stuff, right? So securing networks, and I did that. Provided tip of the spear support in Afghanistan at the fusion cell over in Kandahar, and after that, needed a job when I came back from my deployment as a PFC, and took a job with a company called Dynology, where I was deployed over to Iraq for a year, um, working for Dynology, contracted to pioneer really a very new uh, uh, area that the Department of Defense was trying to look at and explore when it came to like social media and how you could more easily get battlefield commanders could get a message out quicker, uh, of trying to deconflict with other maybe messages that are out there, right? Using social media, using SMS. This isn't anything classified, right? Um, I never go into anything that would be classified by any nature, right? I don't
Right.
do that. We actually, when we finished that contract, we actually took we kept the intellectual property rights. When I say we, the company I worked for, a very small military industrial complex company called Dynology. And one of the founders was General James Jones. They really started it in 2000, I think 2000, 2001, 2000. And it's basically a defense IT company, owned by or founded by General James Jones and his son. His son Jim Jones manages it. He was the president, and I answered directly to Jim. And what we built over there was basically the capability to provide non-attributional uh, uh, psychological warfare capabilities, right? So basically, exactly what we indicted the Russians for, I built the capability for, and I can honestly tell you without hesitation, we never used it. I never took part or used it, these capabilities, in any way outside of the law, right?
Right.
But like I said, we kept the intellectual property rights from this basically battlefield tested weapon, IIA, which is basically social media psychological warfare, and we made it commercially available under the trademark name of ShadowNet and ISI. Um, I didn't
Now that's
know it at the time.
IPSY.
Yeah,
ISI.
IPSY,
Okay.
right? So, I didn't know at the time, but and I only learned this in like maybe 2016 that while we're developing this, now I knew we were McCain's IT company for the primary during his 2008 election. General Jones and John McCain go back decades, about 40 years. McCain, I believe, was his superior officer, commanding officer back in Vietnam.
And
So,
what's interesting is General Jones was Obama's national security advisor.
yep, and
So
NATO Supreme Allied Commander for EUR. So he was a Supreme Allied Commander for Europe,
NATO.
for NATO.
Right.
Um, and so, we have this capability, and we've now made it commercially available. I have had conversations with Jim, his son, on whether or not, or what the capabilities would be for this if used to influence, let's say, an election, a U.S. election. Is that a potential market for a target market? And absolutely, it was. I wasn't in sales; I was in research and development, right? So I don't know anything. And I honestly, I don't know if anything was ever done inappropriately, like in violation of laws, like sold maybe to a U.S. politician and used to uh, basically subvert the election process using black psychological warfare capabilities, right? And it's probably not even illegal. It's illegal if the government were to do it, but it's not illegal with a private company. So that's kind of where you run into the problem. So, but I learned at the time, right? Paul Manafort we were Paul Manafort's number one uh, preferred partner, right?
Right.
So you're developing the exact same thing that several countries um, have claimed that Paul Manafort was using or doing, right? And so at the same time, he's accused of using this exact type of micro targeted social media
Non-attribution.
psychological warfare capabilities in Ukraine in 2010. We're making this application commercially available, right? So
Correct.
does that certain? I mean, Paul Manafort, right? I don't see how. Okay, if it was Pee Wee Herman or somebody, I would say, oh, okay, he's just a pervert, right? But you got you got Paul Manafort, who's literally been accused of this and tied to Mueller's indictments, and you've got John McCain with his hands directly on the dossier, right?
Correct.
You've got Lindsey Graham with his hands directly on the dossier just moments before it's then disseminated using non-attributional assets um, uh, to disseminate it, right? So that's a that's an interesting. It's just really an interesting, very coincidental circumstances. These are all very close friends, partners. Remember what I said? Dynology was John McCain's IT security, social media company up into through the primary
Right.
in '08. Then once McCain won the Republican convention, which I suspect may have even used really like for the first time IIA to help um, give that nomination to McCain. I say this because another company, Psy Group, submitted a proposal to Trump's campaign. This was written in the New York Times and several major media sources, right? So um, you've got this IIA capability, right?
Right.
And you've got these same people that are involved in 2016 being asked these same questions in 2016, which I have evidence that shows they were most likely involved in 2008 to win potentially even the primary. You got that with the Trump campaign turned down using the proposal by Psy Group. But
Right.
then, as you can see on my website, victimoftheswamp.com, you'll see how in that like New York Times or Washington Post article, They literally have the a screenshot of the Psy Group board of directors, which includes um, General James Jones and General Michael Hayden, which was Obama's former national security advisor. They are both now on the board of directors of a company called ClearForce. You can go to the board of directors of clearforce.com, and you can see their profile, which is like almost, it looks like it was from the same template
Aren't they
as the Psy
also,
Group's website was built from.
yes, and aren't they also both on or affiliated with the Atlantic Council?
Oh yeah, right. So, well, before we go into the Atlantic Council affiliation, think about it. Psy Group is directly tied, and Wikistrat is
Mm,
directly tied to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? With
exactly.
Facebook and
Bannon.
with basically collecting and collecting and using people's private PII, private information without their real knowledge or consent, kind of going backdoor ways through it. That's exactly what the eyesight database was designed for. It was a relational database that was developed by some of the most advanced minds in psychological warfare in Baghdad, Iraq, on taxpayer appropriated dollars, and it was built to be able to categorize people into different groups, associations, affiliations, to be able to develop behavioral profiles on them and to use that as a capability to disseminate your message in the most detailed and effective fashion, right?
Right.
So isn't that exactly what the Cambridge Analytica was tied to? So you got General Jones and Michael Hayden both on the board of Wikistrat and that, and then you've got them literally selling the Shadow Net commercially available. I have marketing slicks from that from Dynology.
Didn't they
Uh,
underbid on that contract so that they could hold on to the intellectual property?
See, I don't know. Well, I know they lied on a requirement because the government the government wanted to put it on a classified network, so that they could have more interaction with it, right?
Mhm.
But Jones submitted a ridiculous, crazy bid to do that, because that would take it. He, if it was classified, he wouldn't be able to turn it around. If it was on a classified network, he wouldn't be able to turn around and make it commercially available, right?
Right.
So we kept it on an unclassified network. In fact, a commercial network, which is why I can talk about it, right?
Hmm.
If it was, like I said, if it was on a classified network and I had this conversation with you, I'd have federal agents knocking on my door.
That
They still might knock on my door, but I've got a legitimate case to what I'm saying. If they want to go by
exactly.
the rules, these are the rules. And these people are using it, right? And they are, so people commercially have that ability to use it. That's a problem. And
You
especially when
actually
they're all tied
referenced
in.
right, and you referenced it. You likened it to a weapon of mass destruction.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, and um, keep in mind this was like I started working in IIA from I went from 2007 to 2010. After 2010, after 2010 I was primarily doing knowledge management, content management, information assurance, security for the Department of Defense. I was still working contracts. I was still working for Dynology, although I went to another contract for a brief time doing with the Information Operations Task Force, IOTF in Afghanistan. That was with another company, and I left that after just a couple months. It was just ridiculous. They had me, I'm the Information Assurance Security Officer, and because they underbid that contract, the company that owned it, um, they wanted me to secure a classified network with a Linksys home Wi-Fi. Really?
Right.
I mean, people's
I remember that.
lives. If the enemy got a hold of this information, people would die. And you want me to secure that with a Linksys home Wi-Fi? I'm sorry. I resigned in disgust on
Outrageous.
that and jumped back on a contract with Dynology that they had won a bid on. And just it was just like good timing and went for the next 5 years in South Korea. So, these people are, it's amazing.
It's all about money.
It is. And that's not
Now,
why I enlisted. I enlisted because I'm a patriot, right? Why else would someone be dumb enough to enlist at the age of 39 to basic training, right? Turn 40. You got to be, pretty, you love your country and you want to do the right thing. But once you go, and it exists when you're in uniform because everybody in uniforms trying to once they get in uniform, they're trying to plan on how they're going to get out of that uniform and transition using the clearances and things that they've obtained and knowledge they've obtained it in the military to work for a contracting company, right? Which
right.
will take that. I was getting paid as a PFC with a wife and four kids, a mortgage, minivan. I think I was bringing home while deployed overseas, I think about maybe less than $2,500 a month.
Wow.
How do you live on that? So and then the very last month that I was there, they screwed up my orders. So I had to. They came and told me that sorry, we screwed up on your orders, and we don't have a funding source like it was Homeland Security that was funding my deployment in Afghanistan. So like, swear to God, they handed me a phone number, so I could go call and make a low interest loan
What?
to get myself and my family by because the next month I'm in the combat zone. I'm not going to be getting paid. Uh, so I mean,
Wow.
what do you do, right? As much as you're a patriot and you want to be over there into the fight, I still got a wife and kids back at home. And so they gotta eat, and what am I supposed to do? I gave up a really nice paying job as a system network administrator for Heart and Vascular Clinic over in Tampa. I was doing electronic medical records, uh, pioneering some of that stuff with uh, centricity, GE centricity, right?
Right.
So I gave up a lot to go into this, and then they make a mistake, and then they screw you. And when you raise your hand and say, "Listen, I can't survive on nothing, and this is pretty ridiculous," and that causes, and you go above their head or around them, because what else are you supposed to do? Oh, then that turns your life miserable, right?
Right.
I got sent home because they didn't have a funding source for me, and it took them 3 weeks to get. I left almost a month early before the team that I took off there with got back, and I got back like the same day they got back because they stuck me in a 200-man transient tent somewhere in Turkey. Uh,
That's
really?
interesting.
Yeah. So,
That's
so
crazy.
just skip that. So I got out of the army, needed a job. I was dead broke, and that's when I took a job overseas with Dynology. I didn't know who General Jones was. I didn't know who Dynology was, but I can tell you once I got into there, it was a whole new experience, right? It's great having 20 plus thousand dropping in your bank account every month.
Another
And
ball game.
the first 100,000 tax exempt because you're FDI, foreign earned income. But there's a price with that. If you do anything to upset the client or to jeopardize that contract, you're going to be out of a job, and they'll find a way to do it, whether you like it or not, whether you've done anything wrong or not. Which is eventually what they did with me when I refused to, place my country before company, or
Right.
co- company before country. That ain't gonna happen. So
And
it
if I,
cost.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I was just saying. So that's how I got where I was. Probably a long intro there from what you were
That's actually, I
expecting.
love it. It was great. I have a bunch of questions for you though, because
Sure.
I've looked into your background and I've watched a lot of your interviews. So I'm kind of just gonna go for the meat and potatoes, if you don't mind.
Mm.
Um, so if I understand you right, you're saying it wasn't the Russians, because you were the one who developed or you helped develop the capability of leaving Kremlin footprints in PSYOP.
Um, I'm saying that my knowledge of non-attribution anonymity using common off-the-shelf tools, not things where, DARPA's secretly constructed in some lab. No, I'm talking about common off-the-shelf tools, or just outsourcing it to companies out there that already provide this service, right? And they use different, means to obscure. Like, I could make it look like I was sending an email from the Kremlin, and it would take you years before you ever could actually say this was sent without hesitation by Pat Bergy on a beach in Clearwater Beach, on sitting hanging out on Clearwater Beach with his laptop. Right? It would take you years. So when they came out and said that the Russians did this in a matter of a couple days after it happened, probably actually a little over a month, because from when from when I understand it was reported around March of 2016, and they notified people in April of 2016, right?
Hmm.
So I, I 30 days plus the breadcrumbs led directly to the servers, the
Ransomware.
Russian servers. Do you think Russians are so incapable and inept that they're going to uh, use their own VPN servers? No.
Right.
What they probably used was something off what's called the RBN, the Russian Business Network. And so they just use the servers there. If I was going to do something, I would shoot it toward, I'd make it look like Russia did it, or I'd make it look like China did it if I want, or I'd make it look like Iran did it if I want. Nobody can come out in a month or 30 days and tell with. So if they're coming out there and they're honestly saying that they believe that the Russians did this, and not saying, but we can't be 100% confident, then they are lying to you, and they know that they're lying to you. So why do people lie to you? Then
Right.
you have to base your decisions on that. But they're lying to you because they know what's going on, and they're
Now,
trying to use it for their own political advantage. They might even be involved.
right. Uh, and that kind of ties back to, but before I get there, can you tell us about the Congressional Knowledge Management Service?
CKMS
Hmm.
was that's an interesting story. Um, because you can go online, you can find that it was actually the patent for it was like March of 2009 or 2009. They actually applied for a patent for it like either just before or within the first month or so of 2009, which was the exact same time Obama and Jones were being sworn in. Obama as president and Jones as his national security advisor. At the
Hmm.
exact same time, Jones is patenting CKMS, kind of unique, you know. It wasn't Congressional Knowledge Management software, but it's kind of like, a unique acronym for you, I guess. So a couple months after he resigns from the Obama administration, he gets a contract. Dynology does for the CKMS contract, the Congressional Knowledge Management software, and that contract they manage the calendars, the scheduling, the knowledge management and content management, which is all the documents, all the tacit knowledge of the Congress.
It's profiles, text, addresses,
Mhm.
server information. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so
So,
they had this contract until I believe 2018 when another company took over, which was right after I started sort of publicly going, "Hey, holy crap, what's up with this?" Right? Shortly, right about that same time, they apparently they did a rebid on it, and another company won, and I went down to that company's headquarters, which is listed on their site. I can't think of the name of the company right now, but I went down to their company in Tampa, their headquarters, and it was a mail drop. It was a Regis temporary office mail drop and phone number. Wasn't even a
Wow.
legitimate thing, and that's the company that apparently is in control of the congressional knowledge management system.
You
So I
said
don't trust any of that. It looks fishy as hell.
right. And you said Dynology had the CKMS, right?
Yeah, they got the CKMS contract just months after Jones left office, but he actually patented the CKMS application, the or trademarked the name right
Years
as a month after he took office.
right.
So that's kind of like
He
not very.
knew what he was gonna
Of
do.
course, it was, yeah, right. So almost all the services that General Jones sells, the products he sells, started as taxpayer appropriated funds to develop something for the military, which he retains for himself while he's NATO Supreme Allied Commander, while he's Obama's National Security Advisor, while he's the Atlantic Council Chairman, and
Yes.
he's keeping these things for himself so that the government basically has to start over. Think about how that impacted the battle readiness. All of those geniuses in psychological warfare worked for a year to develop the best possible tool to be able to understand how to disseminate a message legally in
Right.
a way that is the most effective and deconflicts with other messages on the battlefield, right? So,
Mhm.
um, but think of the potential applications you could have on that with that on moving milk off the shelf or catching a predator online if you're a police department or if you're a politician running for office, um, being able to target your opponent in such a way that guarantees you are going to win that election at the cost of maybe a few 100,000 or a couple million, as opposed to what do some of these Senate seats run 30 million plus.
Exactly.
So I would suggest to actually just go through and look at the people who won very cheaply, and you'll probably find that they use those capabilities. Because who knows? It's been a decade since I started this. It's been the last I really was tied closely to it was 2016 or 2010. But I had conversations with Jim on that and on Clear Force, which is another issue people should have. Have you gone to the Clear Force website?
Yes, I did.
Right. So Jones also and Hayden also own a company called Clear Force,
They don't hide it.
clearforce.com. Go there, look it up. What's that?
They don't hide it at all.
No, they don't, right? And shame on us for not asking these questions. Shame
Right.
on us for not listening to what I have to say. What is it? Is it how I'm saying it? Is it who I am?
No.
What is it that does not that people
Resonate.
don't seem to get, that
Well, I think they're
you've
gonna get
got
it
the
after
same,
this.
you got the same people that I developed all of these capabilities for, and now with ClearForce, they've combined all these other data points using artificial intelligence, right? So now they're combining real-time criminal backgrounds, real-time financial, real-time medical,
You
right?
actually
And
filed a
they're
suit, didn't you?
and travel, right? And they're combining all of those to build behavioral profiles, like Minority Report type behavioral profiles, that literally today, right now, somebody is likely either losing a job or being determined whether or not they get the job or a new job they just applied for or not, based on a social media profile that company purchased from ClearForce. That's a problem,
That's a
right?
big problem.
Because what's A, it's ran by the former director of the CIA and the former national security advisor, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. We can go A, B, and C on that. And D, It's building a minority report and determining whether or not you're getting a job. What's how difficult is them for them to change the AI algorithms and have that scan a million people working at Walmart and get rid of anybody that doesn't support Clinton,
Now, I have
right?
a question.
What
Is this like
what's keep that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dragonfly?
I'm not familiar with Dragonfly, so I'm
Okay.
not going to be able to answer that. I mean,
Okay.
I'm basically familiar with it. It's something someone else
No
did,
problem.
and all of the what I can say is all of these companies contract and subcontract out the work to each other, right?
Right.
So
They're
you'll have a
very
prime and
tight-knit.
you'll have a sub,
Mhm.
and that's whoever whoever develops technology is going to generally retain the IP rights for it, which is a huge problem in my mind.
Mhm.
But then they go out and they get a sub, and now on another contract or something else they're doing, and it makes it difficult for people to put these things all together. Like, how would anybody have ever tied my work with the shadow net to General Jones and Michael Hayden's, you know, honest little website called Clearforce that's going to basically develop, which basically develops what is that the social credit scores that they're doing with China. And in fact, you've seen if you've gone to my seen my post, you'll see that UK that Clearforce boasts on a huge multi-billion-dollar investment that they got
Took
from a
money
UK
from
company.
China.
And
Mhm.
then within 30 days of that multi-billion-dollar investment from that UK company, a China-owned company invested 15 billion or more into that through SoftBank, through
I
that Chinese,
That blew me away.
right?
And the
And so
British, right?
are they using taxpayer appropriated funds to develop an app a military application that the son of the NATO Supreme Allied Commander and the son of General Jones, Obama's national security advisor, is he now selling that, or is China now getting access to the intellectual property rights? We know that's what they do.
Think about Huawei. I don't know if I said that right, but
Mhm.
the one that was just sanctioned. So I have a question about you. Okay, so General Jones, I don't know if this is the son or the actual how do you say it, Saucer, the Supreme Allied Commander?
The Saxor.
Saxor. Did
Mhm.
he answer to Petraeus?
They worked together. Petraeus was the head of the CIA for part of the time that Jones was national security advisor, I believe. Right? I
Right,
think that's the case. Um, I was I came in under Petraeus because Petraeus was um, running our IIA program.
right.
I was level 6A. I could have walked into his office if I wanted to. He was on the third floor of Offa Palace, and that's that allowed them all to tie in with public affairs office and things that we were doing to be able to help understand our how our like I said, the battlefield deconfliction and things like that. Then he got moved to CENTCOM commander, I believe, and Odierno took over.
Right.
And so I was working under Odierno after that
Did
when
you
Petraeus. So they're all tied together. They're all friends. And if you look at most of these people, I haven't met one that hasn't. I'm maybe there are a few, but from the perspective of yeah, I was a PFC, but I I have as an information assurance security officer seen another PFC or seen a specialist get knocked down to like a PFC for while he was deployed overseas, updating his website with some content, a personal website, like a retail website, with some content that wasn't military related, wasn't anything. It was just stuff he was helping to raise money with on a website business that he had back home. I've seen I so again, you got
Wow.
these double standards. You can do that. You can be Hunter Biden and get on these boards making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with no experience. You can sell profit from um, uh, taxpayer appropriated and funded weapons, but not that. It just
Right.
make but you're going to lose your rank if you update a website to try to make a few extra bucks for your family back home.
I
I mean,
remember
it's so
you.
ugh.
Yeah. I remember you speaking that there was a GS employee. I think you said he was a 13 or 14, and
Mhm.
he demanded access into the admin. How can you tell
Mhm.
us that story?
Yeah, and that's largely what the basis is of my motion that I see how thick that is. The
Yes.
motion I filed in federal court. You can see the
Wow.
at the in D.C. Now, because is a key tam information in it, I don't even know if they'll acknowledge it for 60 days. It's considered sealed for 60 days, and I have no idea what that means.
Right.
I asked the lady at the clerk's office. I said, "Does that mean I can't show this?" She said, "No. All that means is if you went up there and gave them that number, they would not acknowledge because it's a sealed thing." But obviously, there's nothing classified about it. I
Right.
have it. But that's the genesis of it, right? That was my 2015 IG complaint. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was actually about a year or a year and a half of retaliation for doing the same thing a year and a half earlier, telling him he can't do something if you don't have the proper authorization, having all of your responsibilities stripped from you, and basically coming into work and getting paid $120,000 a year to sit there and watch videos that I downloaded, you know, uh, be, uh, because they've taken all my responsibilities away. Then
Wow.
they had just given me my responsibilities back after a year and a half. And the first thing the guy does is come back and ask me to do the same thing that he did before. And I said, no problem. You just need to provide me with the proper memorandums and certifications showing that you have. Because if you give somebody admin access to a classified network or any network and they don't know what they're doing, which he's never proven to me that he knows what he's doing,
Right.
and you give them access, you're setting them up for failure, right? Because
Or
they could delete something that they wouldn't normally otherwise be able to delete that they didn't have permission to,
mhm.
which could be unrecoverable. So as the information assurance security officer, I'm basically an auditor there. I'm working for another company, but I'm being paid to do a job by the U.S. government.
Right.
And so I'm like the second time, well, sorry, and he started screaming at me so loud that the guy sitting next to me, like 10 feet away, could hear it. And he, after multiple, profanity and threat, telling me that flat out, if you don't do this, you're going to be out of a job. And so that guy, my colleague and myself, we both filed a complaint of abuse, right? Because I'm being threatened for this, and it was heard. The other guy ended up dropping his complaint. He didn't want to lose his job. He knew what was going to happen to him, right?
Yeah.
But me, I've been there doing this too long, and I'm sick of being forced to place my company before my country. And so I said no, and I'm protected by the law saying no, because the law says AR 25-2 says you have to have these documents to be able to get this information, and my government's going to stand behind me because they contracted me to do this, right?
Right.
No. The next day, they modify the contract, removing only the requirements for my position. And instead of putting the other guy that had actually filed the complaint into that position because he literally met the educational and experience requirements for going to the PAO, they demanded that I was the only one, and and modified a $12 million contract, stating on the $12 million contract that it was to move the position to the PAO. But I have multiple documents showing that everybody in that chain of command was all very much well aware of it and notified that, listen, there's an open, active complaint of abuse by the very person who is pushing this through, this modification. And then within a couple days of me being forced out because of the modification of the contract, they replaced me, and then modified the contract back to its original requirements.
That's slimy. That's
But
so
it's
slimy.
and then and I guarantee you, one of two things happened. The guy that went into my spot heard what happened to me, to the last guy that didn't follow the rules, and what I'm betting dollars to donuts. He turned around and said, "Well, I don't want to lose my job. Here you go. You can here, because I'll just fake this or forge this, and you'll be able to get your access. You might get cut off after a year if they do a close examination of what's going on, or if I've just got friends in the KMO office that will just do it because they know they're going to lose their jobs if they don't, and they're getting probably paid more than me, right?
Right.
So is it worth $250,000 for you to stand it? Well, I was making 120 out there. Is it worth $120,000 to refuse that and protect the data? Most people don't,
Yeah. That's
but I did.
sad,
And I
but
thought
you
my
did.
government would stand behind me.
And you did, and you deserved protection. And didn't you say that you went to what's her name? Sarah Carter and
Mhm.
Judge Janine? Can you
Yeah.
tell us the other people you went to
Well,
about this?
I've gone to my congressman. Both I had two different congressmen because I moved a couple different times. But I went to Charlie Crist. He faxed all the information over late or early or like January, first part of January of 2019. I went to Gus Bilirakis, my original congressman here. He's Republican. He's completely worthless. Crist is a Democrat. He's a little less worthless. Be honest with you. At least he listened to me as a veteran liaison did, and I watched him fax the signed and sworn memorandums of record to Adam Schiff, to Devin Nunes, who had just been Adam Schiff just took over from Devin Nunes at that time, the
Correct.
Intelligence Committee, right? Dianne Feinstein, Lindsey Graham, and all of these people I've literally spoken to. I went to the inaugural ball, my tux and all, for DeSantis with Bikers for 45, and told Matt Gaetz, hey, I pioneered the shadow net for Obama's national security advisor. I that so many people under indictment are directly tied to this. You need to
Right.
hear what I have to say. If you do, we can turn the narrative around from Trump's impeachment to Obama's shadow net. Because
Right.
I've seen nothing to implicate President Trump in any of this, but I've seen a lot, every bit of evidence I show are people covering up their shenanigans. See, I don't think the issue with Sarah Carter, right, and Judge Janine, which I've posted uh, their text, our exchanges online. I would normally never do that unless the person violated the trust that I had with them, right?
Right.
So I'm a I considered myself a source that went to a journalist, right? I didn't think I was going to some IIA asset or somebody else. I thought
Exactly.
I was a source going to a journalist. And you can look it up. There's literally, believe it or not, a journalism code of ethics. I don't think any of them have read it recently. But one of the first things in the journalism code of ethics is you are honest and maintain honesty and integrity with a source that comes to you, because when you violate that, you hurt everybody else. So I spoke to Judge Shanine on the phone, December 18th or so of 2018. Um, I got a response from her a day later saying, working on it now. I then was introduced to and spoke with Sarah Carter on January, I believe, 13th of 2019, and spoke with her for over an hour. And she was, wow, fascinated with all this. And she was going to contact Ann Bongino. She was going to do all of this. And I spent the next month um, uh, sending her information, exchanging email stuff. And then I get a text message from her like first week of February. Don't quote me on the dates, go by the actual messages. But I get a text message from her like first week of February saying that she's spoken to Judge Janine. They're going to go live on this next week and start rolling the story out over throughout the following week. I get a message from Judge Janine that says, "Hey, I'm reaching out to
Nunez.
Congress to Nunez in your issue now, right?" And then boom, never heard from either of them again. Never got a response from Schiff, from anyone that Congressman Chris veteran liaison faxed to them directly to their offices with confirmations. Never got another response from Nunez, who went from the head when I sent it to him to the secondary, and Adam Schiff took over. Never got a response from any of these people. Never heard again from Sarah Carter, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Never heard again from Judge Janine. And I'm like, hey,
If
I'm an Afghanistan veteran. I'm a patriot. These people are up there with their freaking flag pins saying that they somehow are on your side, or not even on your side, they're on the side of truth, and that they support veterans, they support military. Um, my story is so well documented and so easy to verify. It is indisputable. And for so long, I wondered why I was being ignored. And then I saw the same things that were happening to me happen to Trump, happen to Judicial Watch, happen to all these people. We're all being stymied and shut out by by the FBI, by members of Congress,
I
right?
have a
So
question about that. Do
yes,
you think now Nunez has or he had Derek Harvey as an aide? If you had to speculate as to why they spoke to Nunez but never put your story out, what would you say?
I think the only thing that can come that I can rationalize, because literally mid-December of last year, almost 1 year to the date that my congressman Congressman Billeracas, his chief of staff, and I can't think of her name right now, but his chief of staff called and left a voicemail while I was standing right there with Nunez's chief of staff. Almost a year to the date later, I rented a car and went to DC, and I had plans to go to several places, but I got a hip problem and it slowed me down really bad. But I went to Nunez's office and I held up the documents and said, "You've had these for over a year. My congressman called you. All of this. Why have you never called me back?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I'll pass this along." They would never answer the question. Then I went over to the Senate Judiciary Committee on the Judiciary, and said, "I sent you guys this information almost a year ago now. Why haven't anyone from your office ever contacted me back?" I even sent it directly to Nunez. They sat down, they made time for me. They sat down with two investigators for 45 minutes in a private room, and I've never heard from them again. Right. So I'm trying to go back to DC. I want to be able to get back to DC and continue pushing on these people. So I can't do much from my porch except for interviews like this, which I appreciate you even sharing, right? But I'm trying to
Yes.
get back there to DC, and we're working on that through my Patreon site. Um, and I've been getting a tremendous response from it so far, right? Which really fills me with hope. If you guys will help, I'll keep pushing this as best as I can,
Yes.
but
Can
I
you
can
give
only
us
do
your
so much.
can you give us your Patreon and tell us you wrote a book?
Yeah,
You
I
even
did.
wrote a book. Can you
So you can
plug
go to
those?
my website, victimoftheswamp.com. I'm doing some updates to it and such, integrating my Patreon, which I showed you. Won't go into it now, but I'll show you how you can easily set up your own site and integrate your Patreon. You'll like that. And
Awesome.
so, victimoftheswamp.com is the active site where I've been uploading stuff pretty regularly since 2017, although I have not written anything and published it there for a while, a lot of that reason is because I wasn't getting any support. And I had some health issues, but you just get burned out. You get depressed because nobody is helping. And then I got a call. Then I got in touch. This guy Jason, who's really popular online, uh, uh, who is that? George Webb and a couple other people, right? And they started pushing me out. And then all of a sudden, I started getting some help. And
You deserve it.
I got about 400 or so donated through PayPal and through my Patreon site. And I use that to buy train tickets, which I took 42 hours round trip. Came back with a busted toe, pinky toe. So that sucked. But and that's when I went and filed this, right? So when I do get help, I'm able to actually go and do something. And the top motion on here is a request that this be given to Justice Roberts, who's overseeing the impeachment, because so many people at such high levels,
Are involved.
after what I described to you today,
Yes.
do you really think it's a good idea to not have this impeachment trial in public with witnesses, or to have Lindsey Graham oversee the investigation that he literally had his hands on by his own admission hours before the dossier was disseminated? Do you really think this is a person we want in charge of the investigation? Someone who has refused to even respond to the guy that built the shadow net for Obama's national security advisor, who didn't even know it, but at the time was Paul Manafort's number one partner. Do you really think you want a guy who ignored this person? Mueller ignored me. Do you really want Lindsey Graham investigating this? If Lindsey Graham has ignored me, when you can see, I've told him, I've shook his hand. You see the picture online. And I told him, I pioneered the shadow net, Senator Graham, for Obama. Let's change the narrative. That was like a month or so before the 2018 election. Imagine, you think there would be a difference in the makeup of of Congress
Oh
if
yeah.
we were talking about Obama's shadow net and not some BS fabricated dossier that Lindsey Graham had his hands on
I
hours
have
before it was disseminated.
I have to tell you,
It's just the height of frustration for me. Mm.
whenever I believe that there, because when did you submit your whistleblower um, complaint?
My original complaint was in 2015, and this is a quick deal on this, right? I have come to the conclusion that my whistleblower complaint, if let's say Fox ran with it, right? Let's say Sarah and Judge Janine ran with it. That would open up, potentially open up, um, uh, what is that called in legal terms? Disclosure, right?
Yes.
And it could potentially expose all of the shenanigans that have been going on. Because think about it, John Huntsman, Abby Huntsman's father, was the chairman of the board of Atlantic Council in 2014. A private investigative firm just came out like a month ago, maybe in December, and submitted what they said was document was verifiable bank records showing money laundering or some money scam between Burisma and Atlantic Council at that same time, uh, that like 2014 to 2016, that Huntsman was in charge. Well, Huntsman, so there's a direct connection right there to the Burisma Atlantic Council, correct?
Right. Heinz?
Assuming that private investigators firms evidence is authentic and that he has bank records showing this, I'm going to say, okay, there is a direct connection to shenanigans that are going on in the Ukraine by
Mm-hmm.
both Democrats and Republicans. They're all just looking at like open season out there apparently in the
Right.
Ukraine. Feel bad for the Ukrainians. But what we need to do is get this information to uh, Congress, to Justice Roberts, who's overseeing the trial, um, and let people know the shadiness behind all parties right now. I'm trying to word this as carefully as possible, right? The,
I hear you.
the shady activity behind Democrats and Republicans leading all of this. I've shaken Lindsey Graham's hands. I've shaken Matt Gates's hand. I got a picture of Matt Gates literally holding a copy of my sworn memorandum of record that was given to him by George Kalala, one of the
I saw
founders
that.
of one of the original founding members of Bikers for Trump and now Bikers for 45, where he literally handed him. I got a picture of him holding that. Why are they covering this up when it could so absolutely exonerate President Trump? Because all these people were up to these shenanigans way before they met President Trump, right? Paul Manafort was doing this stuff. I'm telling you right now, my evidence is so overwhelming that that McCain most likely manipulated the '08 primary, just like
Mm.
they tried to just like they offered the Trump campaign, but Trump campaign refused in 2016. All the same people, all the same shenanigans. We could stop this. I mean, they can stop they can stop a border wall from being built, right?
Right.
A lower court judge has a lot of power. Could a lower court judge say, "Hey, wait a minute. These shenanigans need to be investigated before we could continue with the impeachment"? Is that even possible? I don't know.
I,
I'm
I
an IT guy, right?
I think
But could we stop?
we're gonna push on it. Let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Bill Benny? Have you talked to him at all?
I haven't talked to him. He seems like a good guy. I've had I don't know much about the stuff that he claims, and that goes out of the area that I have any knowledge or personal evidence of, other than what he's saying. So I stick to things that
Stick to
I
what you know.
have that are forensically. So I know, and I know what I know, and I don't know what Pilbenny knows. So I try to be careful with that, right?
Okay. Another question I have here. Now this is going back to the capabilities. So I understand that they have the database, the profile, the real time tracking, medical, all that.
Hmm.
Does does this have anything to do with the voice to skull technology, and is that available?
With the voice to what?
The voice to skull technology, I think they call it the voice of God.
I don't know.
Okay. And the other question is how much of this is available to how much of the capabilities that you have talked about are available to the private or public sector?
Everything that we've discussed. You can go to Clear Forest. You can look at the flyers. You can go to Dynology's website.
Would you
And
say that it's
the big problem that we have, which I also mentioned in my complaint, is that Huntsman, when he left Atlantic Council tapped General Jones to be the chairman, the interim chairman for Atlantic Council. At the same time, all of this is going on. There's a Fox News host. Her name is uh, uh, starts with a G. Jillian Turner.
Yes.
She is General James Jones's vice president for Jones Group International. Apparently, from what I've seen on her website and Fox News's website, she was a Fox News host from 2014, or she worked as a journalist from 2014 to 2017 at least. She still is a journalist now, but during that time frame, she didn't leave her position as vice president of Jones Group International until 2017. She started in 2012. Knowing what Jones does, I I can only assume, in my personal opinion, it looks exactly like they picked someone, a little button nose, and then and a good, smart woman who's been working with the National Security Council. So she'll be great for TV. She's smart with this stuff, and she'll play ball, right?
Right.
And so she goes back to she leaves the National Security Council around 2009 or so, 2008, goes back to, I think, Africa, South Africa or somewhere, goes to school, finishes that from like 2010 to 2012, then joins Jones Group International as vice president. How many people do you know are vice president of a multi-million dollar company when they get straight out of school? You know,
Right.
ah, whoa, right? Answers directly to a retired four-star general. Wow, great job. Nice gig if you can have it. But when you understand that the products that Jones owns and sells are all IIA and influence operations and data collection and building profiles on you and then disseminating through non-attribution. What's more non-attributional than having your vice president of Jones Group International as a host on Fox News? Now we need to ask ourselves: did what? At least what I'm asking is, did Jillian Turner have anything to do with killing my story, which would have potentially impacted her and her former employer, or somebody that she may still have a vested interest in financially? Is she still working? Is she still getting paid by Jones Group International to push stories, push a narrative on Fox News? Like, I was watching her the other day. She was talking about she was giving her professional opinions on the North Korea situation. I spent 5 years in South Korea with USAG Yongsan, USFK J8. I know what Trump is doing is tremendous. And what she said was, I would completely disagree with. And if you're saying, well, who's he? Well, we had the same boss, probably made about the same amount of money at one point. So you should listen to what I'm saying is when it comes to her. Now, why is she being so obviously? Is she profiting from that?
Obviously.
Is that
I
a
would,
and you
it's
don't
my
have a
opinion.
problem with that? Now,
I do.
people don't, right? They don't. I don't understand. You, not you, right? I'm talking to a picture of myself on a screen right now. Just trying to say, why, people, is this, are you somehow okay with this? Because these are people's lives that they're playing with. They profit from weapons. They profit from oil.
Yes.
You've pretty much described all the chaos we have throughout the Middle East. Do you really think Jones Group International doesn't have a connection to Burisma? Jones Group International was like the largest energy lobbying firm in DC. And so, do you really think that while he was chairman of the board of Atlantic Council, um, or there wasn't a reason that he was tapped to replace Huntsman? And do
Right.
you really think that maybe that they killed my story because it would have potentially opened up discovery
Whew.
and exposed all the stuff that they were doing? So I'm not claiming that my story has any direct connection as far as like me being involved or working in a plot to overthrow anybody, but I'm saying that everybody involved with media, Fox News, with everybody, not just Fox News, CNN, everybody. They're all playing a game on you. They're If you look at the hosts, if you look at the staff, I guarantee you, you're just going to see military industrial complex checking every box.
And I do. I do.
And so everything that you're seeing on TV, the reason my story can be killed on every single major network is because they're probably using an application similar to ShadowNet,
Is
which
that
is in itself a basically a project management tool that you would use to disseminate through non-attribution using assets like media, like journalists, like studios where you create and develop content, like all of this stuff. Only when they do it through private companies, they don't have the same rules and restrictions that you do when you're doing it on a DoD contract, right?
is it automated or are there
I can't
people
even
and
imagine what how they've expanded it since they've added the ability for artificial intelligence,
oh
right? So imagine what we can do now. Imagine when they combine the AI, and the predictive capabilities of quantum
is that why they've been
computing.
pushing for 5G?
And that's Jones is one of the biggest pushers for 5G. He is.
Okay.
And do you really want he's out there saying, "Oh my God, you got to be careful because China is going to have this information." And yeah, I agree, China bad. But do you think having Jones, after I described my what I did and can verify this work for like 8 years for this guy, do you really think having him in charge of the 5G is any better?
No. As a matter of fact, he's connected to the Atlantic Council, which also connects to CrowdStrike, Dmitry Alperovich. He was the main pusher of Russia narrative, Fancy Bear, all that BS.
Everybody. He has the ability, he has the means, motive, and opportunity more than anybody I've ever heard mentioned on Bongino, and I love the work Bongino's done on all of these different people. They all come right there to the edge. And but
Yes.
then somehow nobody can get the nerve to come out of their mouth, "Oh, I wonder what Obama's national security advisor were doing." We've got all of these national security advisors being set up, and we've got Trump being set up by all these former National Security Council members. Who do you think has access to all these people? Obama's former national security? Maybe,
Right.
maybe. I don't know, people, but have you ever heard his name mentioned? That's deliberate. How? Look, try to find any
This is
connection
true.
to Jones other than the stuff I've put out.
I've
And
never
good
heard
luck
of
to
him
you
until
on
you.
that.
Mhm. I've never heard of him until I came across your work. And can you tell us about Podesta and you said these people all work together, Manafort, um, Roger
Yeah,
Stone, which I love Roger Stone, but
I love Roger Stone too.
we got to call it as it is.
I love
So,
Trump, and if I thought for a second that Trump was involved in any of this, I'd tear this right off.
right?
I've the only thing he's the only one that I have evidence literally turned this capability down. I have no evidence that anybody else that has ignored me is not sitting in their seats right now because they used the ShadowNet or a ShadowNet like social media psychological warfare uh, uh, capability against their opponent to give them a competitive advantage over their election for a fraction of the cost. How many politicians do you know would turn down something like that? I can do for 3 million what would cost you 30 million. No one will ever know, and it's not illegal.
See,
We're just
now
going to
one of
want not people. You're going to want not people to know, because if people do know that you won
then they get
in such an
pissed.
unethical manner, you're probably not. It's probably going to be your last term.
Right. Now, one question I just got here, can he whistle blow under voter fraud and abuse? So I guess
Um,
he's asking, can you
okay,
blow the
I've
whistle
tried.
under?
I've tried whistleblowing through the FEC, and they turned it down, rejected it, which I don't understand why
Yeah, I
the
saw those
election
papers.
commission wouldn't, why they
Right.
wouldn't want to investigate direct claims that I've made, um, which is completely verifiable, for the potential of election influence using the shadow net by Manafort, by Jones, same people that were directly involved with the side group and Wikistrat thing, where they tried to bid that same capability to Trump's um, to influence the Republican delegates in
Right.
2016. Same people. Why wouldn't you? I guess I think maybe an I wasn't dotted or a T wasn't crossed, and they sent it back. Why? Why wouldn't you? I'm sorry. It's not. There's gonna be mistakes. There's gonna be mistakes. In this filing. But why wouldn't you just say, "Wow, what?" But we should
Well,
probably investigate this at the
yeah.
least.
Yeah. Call this guy, bring him in. Let's see what he's got. Something, anything.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
I
where it
have a
is with it.
question.
Yes.
Oh, this is Dustin. Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your service and your bravery. Um,
Thanks.
so with Trump, you say Trump turned this technology down, and that's great to hear, by the way. Is it possible with him, being a trumpet, if you will, for the Biden corruption and other things? He's been outspoken about these types of things.
Hmm.
Is it possible that some of the people you went to with this information, they may have tried to get the story out and they couldn't because they found out there was an investigation ongoing and it would have sacrificed or it would have put in jeopardy operational security? Or is it more likely that, like you say, that they are, because I do believe that a lot of the media is just a big fake wrestling WWF show. However, I do hope to believe some of them are good. Is it possible, I guess, that they could have tried to do something and ran into some roadblocks?
Well, I've held an above top secret clearance, so I could be read on and I held up to, it was a level 6 that I had in Baghdad, right? I could be read on to any program that they had. And I haven't been able to release a lot of information that allowed me to put this together. I didn't just, I'm not just psychic, starting this conversation, warning people back in 2015 about this. I did it because I have knowledge and information that was very accurate. A lot of it was sort of just a hunch at first, but then all of a sudden, boom, 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 Manafort and all these people just began. Just I recognized things that probably other people wouldn't recognize, right?
Right.
I have
Yeah,
a
but
question
but
whenever you're done.
oh sure, but to answer your question there, um,
I just want to know if you think it might be possible, I guess.
I it's possible. I don't see how it would have been the best choice because they don't have all the information.
I would think they would at
So
least
if
want
they
to
were
talk
if
to
they
you.
were gonna just if they were investigating this and there was a reason. Now, there's also like that would not, even if they had a different reason for doing it, even if they wanted to, they were like, oh wow, this is being investigated. You need to shut up about this. Well, they could tell me to shut up about it, A.
Right.
And B, if they told Sarah Carter or Judge Janine to shut up about it, then they could have just sent me at least a response back saying, hey, we need more time. Something came up. We need, but whatever you want.
Right.
or say just, hey, we decided not to run with it. We don't need to tell you why. But to never respond back leaves nothing but suspicions and questions for me. It's not going to get me to be quieter about something if your intent was to try to not, expose something you're already working on. Well, ignoring me like that wasn't a good way to keep it quieter. It just made I shouted louder. So
Right.
no logic to it. And you were going to say something?
Yes. So I think it was a blog I read of yours. You mentioned a name, Katie Harbath or Harbath.
Mhm.
And so this was interesting because it falls in line with some other research I have. So that was a Facebook to Atlantic Council, like a memorandum of understanding, where they
Mhm.
quote, restore election integrity worldwide, end quote.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if you're familiar, there was a Facebook to Hillary Clinton, quote, template for winning elections, end quote. And I
Mhm.
wonder if that Harbath was involved in that one. And
I,
then,
I I would suspect she was the one that put out the press release, and she works for Facebook,
right,
and she's in charge of election integrity, and she's in charge in of policing um, policing fake news, right? Of reducing fake news. So um, again, you have at the same time this partnership between and these MOUs are being signed between Facebook and Atlantic Council. General Jones is the chairman of Atlantic Council. He is going to be involved with the relationships between them, between Facebook and Atlantic Council. He's going to be involved with MOUs, which may allow subcontractors access to uh, highly restricted Facebook profile information. And again, the more information that you can get for AI applications like ClearForce, the more predictive you're able to be in your data, right?
right,
With the data that you have, the more data, the better the predictive. So we need to see is ClearForce if ClearForce has any even remote backdoor uh, access through a third party MOU to um, to Facebook. I think everybody should be deeply concerned. And remember, keep in mind, these Jones, Hayden were both on the board of directors for Wikistrat and SciGroup. Wikistrat and SciGroup are directly connected to Cambridge Analytica. So Cambridge Analytica got fined $5 billion for not protecting people's information, and
right,
then turned around, went in front of Congress, said we're going to fix this, and fixed it. And how they chose to fix it was by again partnering with the same people that were involved with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. I,
right,
I get just look it. It's online. It's in your face. I'm not making this up. I just put two and two together. Like I said, I know what to look for. I pioneered this stuff. But
right.
that's insane.
You're really onto something here, and it's exciting for me because I actually think you're the whistleblower that Trump is talking about when he says, "Where's the whistleblower?" There's another one there that's a CYA, I think, like covering up their, you know, they probably rolled another guy out, but I think you're the one he wants, and it kind of puts that OIG on in the corner a bit. He's gonna have to do something.
I've done everything I can to do that. I want to get back up to DC again. My the ShadowNet hacker Patreon, the ShadowNet hacker. You can help with that. Victimoftheswamp.com. You can help with that because I got to be able to get back to DC to be able to go in and ask these people why they aren't responding. I need to be able to go back and ask, wouldn't you love to know why the Judiciary Committee hasn't sent me anything? Why Nunez or none of these people have responded to me?
It's mind
And I want to
blowing.
be able to submit some new motions um, to my add some new motions to the pleading that I did. Um, and I'd like to try to go to CPAC. That's going to be a tough one because the ticket for that's like ridiculous.
Right.
But if I can go to CPAC, Bongino is doing a live broadcast there, and if I could get 2 minutes face to face with Bongino, I believe he would do the right thing. I don't know if he's ever been told. I have no faith in whether or not what Sarah Carter told me was true, that she was reaching out to him. And I don't trust her as far as I can throw, an Amtrak train. But very specific with that too. You like that? But
Yes.
uh, I think if I could get 5 minutes with him, face to face, he would look into what I'm saying, and it's so easy to do. Do you think what kind of penalty do you think that there is requesting something like this to go to a Supreme Court justice who's overseeing an impeachment, signing and sealing and swearing to it